Constantly increasing road traffic, which accounts for a quarter of Austria's greenhouse gas emissions, is one of the biggest climate polluters. In the period from 1990 to 2006, there was an increase of 83%. Since the 1st of October 2008, in line with EU regulations and a resolution of the Austrian federal government, petrol and diesel have been blended with 5.75% of biofuel in order to reduce the growing CO2 emissions caused by traffic. The biofuel added to petrol is known as bioethanol or agrar alcohol. It burns without creating soot, is free of sulfur and contains no poisonous or dangerous compounds. Native agricultural plants such as wheat, corn, barley, but also sugar beet in the form of syrup are used in its production. In tropical countries such as Brazil, bioethanol is primarily made from sugarcane. Grain can be used for ethanol production. Ethanol is added to petrol, and in this way almost every car in Austria today has biomass, bioethanol, made in Austria in its tank. Unlike fossil fuels, the use of biofuels does not result in the release of additional CO2. During their growth, these plants have taken CO2 out of the atmosphere and stored it. During the production of bioethanol and the burning of this biofuel, the carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere, only to be collected and stored again by new plant growth. A climate-neutral cycle is created. We have had such a greenhouse gas balance sheet professionally compiled and found that with our raw materials and our procedures and with the inclusion of the complete value-added chain, we would save 50% of carbon dioxide emissions when compared to fossil fuels, and this already meets the European Union criteria laid down for the year 2017. This results in a reduction of domestic CO2 emissions of around 380,000 tons per year. In Austria, this agrar alcohol is produced at the Agrana bioethanol plant in Pischelsdorf, Lower Austria. Here, up to 240,000 cubic meters of bioethanol can be produced from up to 620,000 tons of raw material. In this way, the annual proportion of bioethanol in petrol can be covered up to a level of 10%. Modern Otto engines have no problem dealing with this mixture. Bioethanol raises the octane rating of petrol, thus increasing the compression ratio and the performance of the engine. Also worthy of note are better combustion and lubrication, as well as reduced engine deposits. After the grain harvest has been brought in, the raw materials are taken to central granaries where they are sorted according to quality and then prepared for transport to the ethanol plant. Only those raw materials are used that conform to current EU quality and sustainability standards. The site at Pischelsdorf was carefully chosen. The plant has all the infrastructure required for the easy supply of raw materials, and a large part of the necessary merchandise can be delivered in an environmentally friendly manner. The entire facility is managed and monitored from a central control station. The production process from raw material to the end product, bioethanol, lasts a few days and involves several stages. The raw materials are continuously delivered to the bioethanol plant throughout the year in accordance with daily requirements. Deliveries by ship can be unloaded at the pier right next to the silos. Conveyors bring the raw materials to the entrance hall where the necessary samples are taken and tested for quality. Deliveries by lorry are registered and weighed at the entrance to the factory premises before they reach their final storage area. The same, of course, goes for raw materials delivered by train. Before they are unloaded, the grain or maize have to pass through a precise quality control. Samples are taken at random and are immediately examined in the nearby laboratory. First of all, there is the automatic determination of the moisture, starch and protein content, as well as the weight per hectoliter. There then follows a visual control. The raw material is checked for contamination and vermin. In addition, the sample is also tested for mycotoxins. In the case of maize, an additional GVO test is made. As soon as these tests have been satisfactorily completed, the reference sample is archived and the raw materials can be stored in silos. The raw material is ground in the mill as required and then goes on to mashing. This is where water, enzymes and nutrients are added. Enzymes are protein molecules which act as a catalyzer to speed up chemical reactions and break down starches into sugar molecules. During the first stage, liquefaction, the molecules of starch, consisting of long glucose chains, are broken down into shorter fragments. The liquefied mash is then cooled and taken to fermentation. During the second stage, which involves simultaneous saccharification and fermentation, the individual glucose molecules serve as a substrate for the added yeast, and ethanol is formed. Once this process is complete, the fermented mash goes on to distillation. Here, heat is used to separate the alcohol from the mash. The energy required for this is provided by hot steam, which is delivered via pipes from the nearby waste treatment power station at Duenrohr. This procedure is environmentally friendly and avoids the use of additional fossil fuels. As distillation only achieves a maximum ethanol content of 96.4%, there follows an additional dehydration using mole sieves. This raises the ethanol content to more than 99%. The alcohol produced is cooled and stored in tanks. The ethanol is delivered by train to the refinery from this interim storage facility. The material left over after the distillation process, which consists of mash that has had the alcohol removed, is called stillage. The solid component is separated from the liquid component by means of a centrifuge. The liquid component is then concentrated into a syrup-like consistency called thick stillage. This thick stillage is then mixed with the solid or wet cake component, dried, turned into pellets and processed as high-quality protein animal feed. In this way, the plant at Pischelsdorf not only produces bioethanol, but also up to 190,000 tons of animal feed, which is distributed under the name Actiprot. In ISO 9001, QS, GMO-free and sustainability-certified bioethanol plants, samples are taken during the entire production process and analyzed in the factory laboratory. Samples of the end products are also taken from each delivery and are tested and archived. All our raw materials are GMO-free. This is a requirement imposed by Agrana on its factories both in Austria and abroad. The GMO-free nature of the raw materials used in bioethanol plants is a very important issue because a byproduct, namely the animal feed that is produced, finds its way back into the food chain. This protein-rich feed is used in the livestock industry to feed cattle, pigs and also chickens. I use Actiprot because it is an Austrian protein feed, GMO-free, and because my cattle love eating it. We in the agriculture industry are very pleased that this protein is available, because otherwise we buy most of it in South America, Brazil, Argentina, where most of the soya grown is genetically modified, and the resulting protein ends up on our home market. 180,000 tons of Actiprot replaces 60,000 hectares of soya in South America, and 240,000 cubic meters of ethanol replaces 160,000 cubic meters of petrol. The percentage of biofuels in Austria is to be increased to 10% from October 2012 in order to reduce crude oil use and improve the CO2 balance sheet. Apart from all the admixture possibilities, there is also superethanol E85. With this fuel, approximately 15% petrol is added to bioethanol. In addition, superethanol is competitively priced because in Austria the bioethanol portion is exempt from the petroleum tax. In some countries, such as Brazil for example, over 70% of motor vehicles today already drive on superethanol. And in Sweden, more than 30% of all motor vehicles use this environmentally friendly fuel. The Brazil model shows on a large scale that one can operate automobiles with 85% alcohol in the tank. This is not yet the case in Europe, where we are just getting started. We are, of course, intensively involved in providing the necessary petrol pumps. Engines have to be specifically modified if they are to use superethanol E85. With a flexi-fuel car, you can fill up anywhere. If a particular petrol station does not have superethanol E85, then you can simply fill up with ordinary petrol and remain mobile. Small technical alterations are needed, mainly to do with the software and the seals, because the seals and pipes have to be alcohol resistant. Everything else is done by the motor management itself, and the motor automatically converts itself depending on the fuel you put in the tank. The plan in the future is to develop a comprehensive network of superethanol filling stations, so that an important contribution to CO2 reduction can be made. And the European Union has a 50 million ton grain surplus, more than would be needed for bioethanol production. And in the future, should the world's population indeed grow to 9 billion, one can then of course increasingly turn to second-generation raw materials for the process once they've been developed, and in this way direct today's agricultural surpluses into the food chain. The production of bioethanol from GMO-free native plants is an ecologically sensible alternative to fossil fuels, which would contribute to the reduction of harmful greenhouse gases and which would make Austria more independent of soya feed and crude oil imports.